Yeah, I think it's to me it's very much so that the point number one related to the HR transformation, right? Because with the current situation is very perfect example of what is chaotic looks like.
Yes.
So I remember a few months back, we already amazed when we talk about digital brought everything into complex stage, but with the outbreak, it's like changing into chaotic like overnight, right?
Yeah.
So the question is more, yes, in this type of chaotic work that we need to be able to respond, yeah, to act and to respond quickly. So there is no longer time or sufficient time to analyze or over analyze things, and that to me is it's becoming not only interesting but yet very challenging, right? So
Yeah.
I think I like to hear more on that.
Yes, that's great. Yes, Shashwat.
Yeah. So, in fact, a couple of things. The point which you are making, Vivek, is very interesting. So, what is happening is fundamentally what, say, for example, COVID did was the whole planning cycle broke. So,
Yeah,
if you ask me, all organizations, even with the best of the tools, planning and execution has been separate.
yeah,
Planning has been running mostly annual cycle. At times you have this annual cycle with some quarterly uh, review,
yeah,
but it's still a static planning. What
yeah,
COVID forced us into is literally what a dynamic planning will look like. And Vivek, what you are asking, many CHROs are actually today asking this, because if you look at from a CHRO perspective, while every one of business leader is reaching out to you for some or other decision, because the problem is fundamentally social health employee, and hence you need to take the final call. It impacts finance and the business matrix directly.
yeah,
So, and hence, if you ask me, the biggest, most interesting insight for me, while this report talks about ways of working change in HR, the larger question, if you, Vivek, think of yourself as a business leader, because HR leader is also a business leader because you are sitting at the top of the organization, is how do you change the way of working at the top? And when I say, it's also HR issue, so ways of working at the top where you actually enable ongoing real time collaboration on planning and execution. So that means that there is a real time shift needed from the way people plan and operate. Because just, and I will explain it further. For example, you do a business planning, then HR does HR planning, sales distribution, sales will do your sales planning, and many finance will do finance planning. While they take inputs from each other, all of them will work with very different set of jargons, and they are not connected. So it's not that there is a one common understanding. So, for
yeah,
example, the moment you take an HR decision, you should fundamentally be ready to understand the financial impact of that. That doesn't happen. So, what we have seen, if you ask me, is the biggest demand has come suddenly on the dynamic planning side. Actually, the dynamic planning as a tool was ready all the time. And Vivek, to uh, your comments, and I guess you have been advocate that it's not about technology, it's about the behavior change, because people were not willing to change to a different way of working. It did not take off as much as it should, because dynamic planning is less about the tool. It's more about a planning which is collaborative and visible same time to everyone. it forces you to collaborate, and then it forces you to take have a view of execution in real time with planning, and then take actions. So it actually takes away in many ways any other assumptions, because typically people also play politics. While you have a plan, you know you are running behind, but you know you will try and do a catch up. So that whole slack in the system goes away. But it makes people more open and trusting. So when leaders trust each other, it starts working. And now HR also needs to imbibe a similar behavior at an HR level. I went into that track because I see that as the biggest change emerging out of the environment. Because literally, the leave aside BCP of one function or one part of organization, uh, COVID has tested business continuity at an organizational and a society level. So when organization has gone through that, now there is acceptance to adopt something like that.
Yeah.
And that I'm seeing, that's a huge positive change, because fundamentally organizations will become very different when they start imbibing such
Yeah. Also, point number 5, can you elaborate a bit more about
values.
this three pillars model and meet for the
Yeah.
model
Yes.
specific goals?
So Vivek, it's my favorite topic. I've been doing HR transformation now for 20 years.
Yeah.
But if you ask me, people talk about three pillar model all the time. But so couple of things from my side. One, three pillar model is a myth. It's not true. There exists a fourth pillar. And Vivek, if you go back, what used to be a line HR, field HR, whatever name you give, that generalist role is there hidden somewhere. So you need to recognize it. But before coming to the roles itself, more than the role, it's important to define boundaries between roles, and how do different roles in HR collaborate with each other. Because if that you don't do well, then HR BPs and COE leaders will always fight for the attention of your business leaders and so on. And that really reduces the effectiveness of HR. Now, coming to field HR roles, now what happens is a lot of organizations will hide them under business partners. What it does essentially is it actually pulls down the role of the business partner.
Mm.
So, business partner should not be more than at the level where your strategy stops. So, for example, if you think of your kind of business, which is in many ways monolithic, but there are segments, sub-segments. You may have a modern trade part, you may have something which is not modern trade but done differently, and there are real strategy differences in those business. And to
Mm.
support that, you need actually differences in talent strategy. That's why you need a business partner at that level.
Mm.
Anything below that is actually not a business partner.
Mm.
Similarly, a lot of people actually say field HR roles or generalists will disappear when their all services gets automated. That's again a wrong view, because if you are saying that culture, behavior, values are the anchors on which organizations will compete longer term, then you need someone who that role, which is custodian of employment bond, not only an engagement, from an employee relationship to experience to culture. So you literally need a Vivek, a role which is the trusteeship of employees.
Mm.
Because what has happened, three pillar model essentially, fundamentally, the flaw with that model was it made HR subservient to business. While we talk about that HR needs to partner with business, the three pillar model is too much service oriented. While service orientation is great, and that's a must have from HR has a role of partnership on the business partner side. And the third other dimension is HR is also the trustee of employees' welfare, future, so that at times you stop business from taking decisions which look great in short term but is bad from a long term perspective. And hence, to balance that role, you need a different dimension in HR. And that's why this role has not disappeared in spite of consultants trying so hard for last 30 35 years.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting finding here when you talk about the HR business partnership in the mature organization. So the percentage is more on the HR ops because of the services, the technology that you use, right?
I can explain typically what percentages will be, and
Yeah.
report has the data. So this is the way to look at it. Think of a
Okay.
square cake, Vivek. Think of a square cake, and you have many cookie cutters to cut it.
Yeah.
So if you think of things which cannot be standardized and which are not predictable and are by nature strategy and design, that's your COE role. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, next to that is applying this unique design to a business context to problem solve. The gray strip, that's your business partner. It's fairly thin. So, if you ask me, business partner roles in very large organizations may not even be significant at a percentage level. So, if you think of a very large global pharma company, they may have a life science, biomedicine, they may have a generics division, they will have research division, and they could have bulk drugs and
Mm.
OTC, 5 areas. Those 5 line of businesses, and they may say that for us, health devices and cancer is too big, so separate line, 7. And they could have huge businesses in 4 5 global geographies. So you are talking of total 35 40 HRBPs reporting to a super HRBP, or if you aggregate or not. Now if you look at 40, and I'm talking of organization which could be like 50 60 billion dollars, it's a very small number compared to rest of the HR, which could be 1,000. So I'm saying, while there is no right thumb rule here, you are talking of ratio percentage, which is certainly less than 10%.
Mm.
As you grow up, it will be even 5% of HR. As you become super large, it could go down further. Now, when you think of COE role similarly will shrink over time as organization becomes stable and you see less program changes. COE roles will decrease, and that's where you will see a lot of times people get trapped in best practices. Will look at certain organization and say, "Oh, whole of talent management is being run by one individual or one COE." Great, but this may be an organization which is say 200 years old, has gone through all design, is mature. Literally, no, not many people are leaving and not many new people are joining. So, if you look at from a flux perspective, Vivek, not much flux is happening, and
Mm.
hence they could have very little COE role. But when
Yeah.
you are, for example, look at your organization, you are still relatively new. At one level you are establishing the firm, another level you are growing very fast. You will not only need to be defining programs, you are also designing and then testing program success. So you will have more scale in your COEs. So that's where it's fair to have COEs which could be 20 25% of overall numbers
Huh.
in Asian context for newer organizations.
Yeah.
For mature organizations, it will go down to 15%. Field HR will be, currently field HR is around 30, will reduce. Operations should be 40. Now, if and that's the opportunity, Vivek. What happens is, and you will have more data on the research. We also will have data by industry sectors and all separately, which we should come out soon. But the opportunity is different. You look at the opportunity this way: is that operations can continuously shrink as you automate. So to give it a perspective, we in as a globally we implement technology for clients. We do advisory. We also run BPO platform for clients. So in the services and operations which we run for our clients, we are running platforms at numbers like 1 is to 1600, 1 is to 2000, which is unheard of. Clients are still setting up their operation centers at 1 is to 400. So
Mm.
that's a, and I'm not even talking future. Here and now, you have an opportunity to take your service center, which could be 1 is to 400 to something like 1 is to 1500 for sure. Now, if you look at that journey, what it does is it frees up budget and manpower for you to invest in newer roles. What kind of newer roles are emerging? There is a demand for roles around organization planning and analytics. There are a lot of
Yeah.
demand coming around people analytics roles to go and problem solve. There is demand coming around special projects and organization change anchor roles. So that's one aspect around the roles. The other aspect I would like to say is that Also, the ratios are very contextual. So a lot of people will look at our report and say, oh, by the way, you are saying great companies are at 1 is 200.
Mm.
But I will say take it as with a pinch of salt. So why I'm saying that? A lot of global banks have created efficiencies, but they do not want to move beyond 1 is to 125. They have technology, Vivek, where they can move to 1 is to 200, 300 in HR. They don't want to do it because with high tech, they are maintaining high touch because that's what their business demands. Now, similarly, there are businesses which are low margin businesses. So, for example, if you look at contract manufacturing, where the whole business runs on a overall margin of 6%. Between inputs and output, you have 6%, and in that you have to manage all your costs. They actually have, best firms may have ratio at 1 is to 400, and they still look at the ways of transforming HR and improving it better. So your benchmarks are relevant, but you need to translate that into your business context. And one, affordability of business, and second, how do you still provide the best possible service in that context to employees so that adoption is great adoption will get you best possible data, and that data will allow you to take right decisions. So that's really the virtuous cycle. So
Mm.
I will stop here. We'll have more things around capability demand coming in. Business acumen has gone up. Building trust based relationships have gone up, because if you have to drive business partnering and HR has to become business driver, you need to first gain trust, because only then you are allowed to partner. So that has become a big
Yeah.
one. And similarly, you will see longer term more and more some of these dimensions. So if you look at as HR, we have been pushing this as skills needed for leadership or leadership development programs. We had actually focused HR training too much into technical and functional skills. Actually, what we do in leadership program for our leaders are exactly the similar skills which is greatly needed in all aspects of HR. Whether
Mm.
you think of HR BPs, even HR operations is interesting. When you look at HR ops data separately, and I will show
Yeah.
that to you, shared services, you will
Mm-hmm.
see that analytics orientation comes in, and fifth number is trust based relations, above many more things, because they need to have two things. They need to have technology, and transactions are natural, but analytics and employee experience is interesting. This is the only role, Vivek, which will see all data coming together, because if you are running the shared services for the firm, you see all programs connecting with each other, and you have that bird's eye view. So you need to understand why these programs were done this way, and looking at data, you should ideally have the first view to go back and talk to your HR colleagues to say, hey, this is not working, this is what we wanted to do, but this is what data is telling that. Also, for that conversation to happen, you need trust of HR, your HR colleagues. Because in many ways, there is hierarchy in HR where you think of HR ops as the lowest. That doesn't work, because you need to give them a respect on their insights, because that insight will change the game for HR.
Mm.
So I just, this point I wanted to make.
Yeah.
Uh,
Great.
yeah.
Yes. So thanks, Shashwat. I think you really very nicely explained to us how the ways of working for HR are changing, how even the demands businesses have from HR have changed, and how the roles are being reimagined, how the capabilities are being reimagined. So very, very in-depth insights. Thank you so much for sharing them with them. I'm sure Vivek would agree that she did get a great insights from there. So now,
Yeah.
yeah, great.